Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome back to Monster Energy Supercross, the official video game 2, where we are playing the DLC track, Los Angeles Coliseum, because today we're going to be talking about the newly announced SuperMotocross Championship, SuperMotocross World Championship, I guess we should call it, the Feld and MX Sports collaborative series that is going to be a playoff added on to the end of the regular motocross and supercross season, basically. And kind of wanted to make a video on our channel today talking about it because I feel like I'm seeing a lot of people just seeing this headline and jumping to some conclusions. So hopefully if I kind of talk through it a little bit, you guys get to hear a lot of different, how this whole thing came about and everything like that. Maybe it'll make a little bit more sense to you guys. And obviously it'll maybe help you kind of understand where the series is going and maybe, I guess, how it could pertain to video games a little bit too. So we could talk about that as well. But for starters, in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, you haven't heard anything in the news today about it, Feld Entertainment or Feld Motorsports that runs Monster Energy AMA Supercross and MX Sports Pro Racing, which runs Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, have come together in a collaborative effort to create the Super Motocross World Championship, which is a 3-race series that will take place at the end, basically at the end of Lucas Oil Pro Motocross every year. And it is more or less a playoff. The top 22 riders in combined points for 250 and 450 on the entire season will be able to be basically seeded into this playoff championship, so on and so forth. The finale is going to be at Los Angeles Coliseum in Los Angeles, California. So that is why we're playing it in this game today. But it sounds like the other 2 rounds are likely going to be at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas, and Atlanta Motor Speedway, just outside of Atlanta in Georgia. And those will be kind of, I guess, the qualifying rounds for eventually the final race, which will be, the World Championship decider at the Coliseum here in LA. And it's not the Supercross and Motocross champion are still going to be crowned and all this stuff. So it's not like it's replacing anything, I guess I should say, from a championship perspective. It's kind of creating a 3rd championship, if you will, like a season-ending champion where the people that have the most points combined on the season get to actually race each other, which in some part might be kind of cool because then we may only see some of the guys that, like privateers, for example, that only race Supercross and Motocross and not just Supercross or Motocross. So for example, right now, like Cade Clayson, the SGB Honda team is back from injury. He's racing Motocross. He raced a lot of Supercross. His teammate for Supercross, Alex Ray, is not racing it. So that's Cade would get in and Alex Ray would not, for example. Some things like that. But again, it's more or less just kind of like a playoff to add on to the end of the season to crown one main holistic champion, I guess, for the year. I don't necessarily think that in terms of an industry perspective, it's going to hold the weight of this is the sports Super Bowl now or something like that. I don't think it's going to be like that at all. But it does replace the Monster Energy Cup, which I think to maybe an outsider's perspective used to be the biggest event of the year. Obviously, insiders wise, it wasn't. But I think, if you're looking at it from an outside, you're like, oh, here's the season-ending event, $1 million on the line, must be a big deal. And the Monster Cup is now gone, and this event/series kind of replaces it. Now, to combat the elongated schedule that this has created, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross next year in 2023 will be a round shorter, so it'll be 11 rounds. Obviously, no Monster Energy Cup, so kind of like Supercross and Motocross both making some concessions there. And we're essentially going to go from what was a 30-race season with 17 Supercrosses and 12 Nationals plus Monster Cup to a 31-race season with 17 Supercrosses, 11 Nationals, and then this 3-race championship to end it. And like I said, it is going to go into October, so we're going to have basically the longest full season ever. And not necessarily, I feel like everyone's going to be racing the Super Motocross Championship. I do think that there's going to be, some teams or some people that just decide not to do it, would be my guess. But I think for the most part, you're going to see a lot of the factory teams on board with this. You're going to see a lot of the satellite teams also be on board with this. Seems like the industry itself is pretty happy to see MX Sports and Feld working together. And we'll see what happens from it. Now, the first thing that I want to hit on from this, because I've seen a lot of people complaining about this, is it's not going to create more problems with streaming. In fact, the one of the main reasons why it's coming together like this is to create a more enticing TV package for whoever it is that it ends up being. There's not anything signed, sealed, and delivered yet, but it sounds like it's going to be at least one TV provider, TV/streaming provider for the entirety of the 2023 season between Supercross, Motocross, and SuperMotocross now, instead of what we had this year, which was NBC/Peacock for Supercross, and then MAV TV, then MAV TV to Flow for outdoors because of all that kerfuffle. And the reason why we've had such a crazy streaming schedule, at least for the national side of it, is the contract for the Nationals expired last year, but the Supercross team was still in contract with NBC through this year. So in order to make it so that they get back on like the same schedule between Feld and MX Sports signed a 1-year deal with MAV TV to, not have a bigger, longer, more lucrative deal with somebody else that then makes it impossible for them to have this holistic streaming package between Supercross, Motocross, and SuperMotocross for 2023. So they took a 1-year deal with MAV. They're just trying to make it through this now. Obviously, MAV hasn't worked out to the best, but they're just trying to make it through so that next year they can sign a more lucrative TV package as a holistic entity, if you will. So that's one of the big key talking points that a lot of people are missing out on, is like streaming next year, for the most part, is supposed to be like right back on par with, some of the stuff that we had before, where it's all on one platform, it's really easy to find and stuff like that. So that's obviously a good benefit to it as well. But another thing that I'm seeing a lot of people get kind of dead wrong about this is Feld and MX Sports reacting and trying to stop, the FIM World Supercross Championship from having any more power or more weight or what have you. And really, it's not 100% accurate for sure. It's maybe like 10% accurate. There's probably a little bit of them that's wanting to make sure that this series doesn't take off and take away some of their riders or teams and so on and so forth along those lines. But if you read this story, and I'll be sure to link it in the description below, that was written by our own Jason Wygant at Racer X, he basically details that Feld and MX Sports had started to work together even before the COVID pandemic happened, to try to work on some more collaborative efforts together. And then the pandemic happened, and they really had to work together to make sure the Supercross season in 2020 could get in. They obviously had to push it back until June and almost going into July before the Nationals were able to start. And then we only had a 9-round national championship instead of all 12, because they're trying to make it more possible for Feld to get their championship in for all 17 and so on and so forth. So they really have been working together since then. And then last year in 2021 is when Feld told the FIM to kick it to the curb. They were done working with them. So the FIM went out and found SX Global to partner for the World Supercross Championship, which now starts this year. They're going to have a 3-round championship starting in Wales in October as well. So, it's obviously another thing that people are like, well, they're trying to combat that series. And like I said, I think there might be like a tiny bit of truth to that, but I do think that the overarching theme here is that they're trying to work more collaboratively together, MX Sports and Feld, on getting these TV packages, getting a better kind of race series and race scheme put together so that the teams and riders are happier with it. Obviously, there's going to be more purse involved. There's a $10 million purse involved with the Super Motocross series, which is the biggest that it's ever been in the sport's history. So there's a lot of positives to it that I'm kind of surprised to see how many people are reacting negatively about it. Like, yes, I guess it is frustrating for some people that there's going to be extra rounds. It's going to go longer. It's going to go in October. But they've already tried to combat that by saying it's pretty likely that it's going to end in September by 2024. This 2023 season, it just so happened that's when the LA Coliseum was going to be available for them to have it be the last round of the championship. And how about that as well? Like, the birthplace of Supercross, the LA Coliseum, all the way back in 1972. And we haven't gone there for anything, aside for like X Games stuff. We haven't gone there for Supercross since 98, I think it was. So it's been a long time. And I think that it's really, really cool to see such a historic like landmark in our sports history come back in as basically this big finale, final round deal and whatever. So like, that's cool. I think in terms of the streaming package, it's great. I think the benefits in terms of how much money and value can be added to the sport with this like kind of competition that's going on with World Supercross as well. There's a lot more money going to be shifted onto the table. The teams are kind of into it as well. So in general, I think that this is really a positive thing today. And a lot of people saying some of the negative things about it or what have you is kind of strange to me, because I feel like this is monumental for the sport to have these two entities working together, collaborating, and trying to make something, work. Like, even if this series doesn't really work right off the get-go, I think that they'll work together to figure something out. I think the key point is that they are actually working together. This is I guess this is like Live Golf and the PGA Tour coming together. That's a bad example because I feel like Live is looked at as World Supercross, but it's something along those lines where it's two entities that for a long time were seemingly competing against each other are now actually being friendly and trying to collaborate on this series for a change. So I think that that's all positives. I think that's good, and I think there's a lot of exciting aspects of it. We'll see how it pans out, of course. I think we'll see how many people, I guess, make it healthy the full season, what that 22 rider field in the 250 and 450 class kind of looks like for those last 3 rounds. And then eventually I'm sure we'll have a breakdown of the purse and how much is actually paid out at each round, and so on and so forth along those lines. And then to this point, we haven't had any reaction from the riders yet about it either, because right now the Loretta Lynn's is going on this week. We're not going to see the pro athletes for another week and a half. I'm sure we'll get on the phone with a couple of them and hear their reaction and see what they have to say about it. But we're not going to get a real kind of community reaction from everybody that can be publicly announced until we're back at Unadilla in a couple weeks. So there's still going to be more news coming out about this. I think we're going to hear more from the riders and hear their perspective on it, because obviously at the end of the day, it technically does add an extra race for them. It takes away 2 but adds 3, so you have 1 extra race. They're trying to condense it a little bit more to keep it only within September, and so on and so forth. Now, another question that I heard raised is well, does that mean that Motocross of Nations is just done? It's never going to happen again? And while I don't know officially anything about this, one thing that you have to consider about the Motocross of Nations is, Giuseppe Luongo and David Luongo, who run In Front Moto Racing, who put on the MXGP series, have constantly been trying to further and further push back Motocross of Nations and create a longer schedule for the series. They're up to trying to get about 22 races in a year at this point out of the MXGP calendar, and that of late, even last year, for example, for the Motocross of Nations, cut right into the middle of their schedule. They had the Motocross of Nations at Mantova with 6 rounds of the World Championship still to go, I think it was. So some guys completely skipped out on racing it because of that reason. Romain Febvre didn't go for France because he was trying to win the world title. Same for Tim Geiser going for Slovenia and things like that. So I think for the Luongo's side of it, this is just a positive thing for them, because now they can push Motocross of Nations definitely back in October without ruffling feathers. I would probably expect the 2023 Motocross of Nations, which will take place at Ernée in France, is probably going to be late October now. They were trying really hard to push up the Motocross of Nations before to match up with the U.S. schedule a little bit better, because right now, Pro Motocross ends early September, and then we don't even have the Motocross of Nations until September 24th and 25th. So that's still 3 weeks for the U.S. guys. They would want to decompress from the season and stuff like that, instead of keeping it ramped up, and maybe they don't come in as prepared. Now we're going to have it so that they're still riding and racing into late September, in this next year's case into October, and then we're going to have the Motocross of Nations after that, most likely, would be my guess. I don't know officially or anything like that, but just based on trends that I've seen over the years with how MXGP is going and how many rounds they're trying to add, I don't necessarily think at all this takes Motocross of Nations off the table for American riders or riders based in the U.S. Tom Vial coming to the U.S. next year. I'm sure he'll still try to ride for Team France when he can, and Dylan Ferrandis and Ken Roczen and Joe Shimoda for Japan, and the Lawrence brothers for Australia. I think for the most part, everyone's still pretty far in on wanting to do Motocross of Nations whenever it's possible. And I think that, MX Sports and In Front, they have worked together of late to try to get some stuff done that makes it a little bit better. Obviously, the relationship with them and putting the event on at Redbud every 4th or 5th year has been the best it's ever been, it seems like. And they did collab for a little bit to have the Charlotte MXGP round. Remember, that was a MX Sports and, at the time, Youthstream kind of collab to put that Charlotte GP together. So I think really we're seeing the sport as a whole kind of trying to work together and come together a little bit more, so that it's like a rising tide raises all ships situation, instead of just like arguing with each other and never getting the right TV deals and never getting these more lucrative contracts that they've tried to seek after over the years. So again, like I said, I feel like I've just seen a lot of misinformation being spread about it. I'd highly recommend to read as much as you can about this before you start commenting a bunch of stuff on it. I'm trying to make a video highlighting some of the details, but seriously, go read some of the articles. We interviewed Kenneth Feld, the CEO and chair of Feld Entertainment. That's up on RacerX Online, but also there's so much good information being spread around. Michael Lindsay of Vital is going to be doing some stuff with, I think, Dave Prater and Davey Coombs today, so you can get some information from him. I know the Swap Moto Live guys are on it as well, and the MXA guys. Like, just go read some stuff. Like, seriously, read through these PRs and a couple other things like that before you jump to conclusions about what this series is. Like, yes, Super Motocross is a weird title for the series. It does maybe, I guess, look like from the outsider's perspective that this is them reacting to World Supercross and another race added to the calendar, so the riders might be upset, but I don't think that that's the general consensus from the industry at all. And I think, for the most part, people are pretty happy with this. So, yeah, like I said, read about it. Go through, actually get some information before you start commenting, because I think you'll learn quite a bit of stuff about this series that you maybe didn't realize beforehand. So, anyway, that's a quick spiel on the 2023 now Super Motocross Championship that has been announced today. Feld and MX Sports collaborating for basically the first time ever, and huge day for American motocross and supercross. No question about it. So if you have any more questions or comments that you guys would like to add or ask or anything along those lines, please be sure to get involved in the comment section below. I'm happy to go down there and answer anything that I can. But that's it for us today here on Start Your Systems. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.